Care Bears, friend, tender heart, then cheer.
So we got an Atari video game. There's so many different games to play.
The Sony Walkman is a tiny stereo cassette player with truly incredible sound.
Ever wondered what life would be like if tomorrow you woke up and somehow it was the 1980s? Scary thought, right? Well, 4 decades ago, life was, how can I put it nicely, just a little bit different. Some things which may have been considered completely revolutionary back then probably wouldn't have the same impact in this day and age, but that's not to say they weren't absolute game changers back in the day. So grab a drink, sit back and relax as we take you through 30 everyday items from the 1980s. First up, it's the VCR recorder. Imagine the scene. It's Friday night and you've just knocked off and are heading straight to the pub, but then you realize your favorite show is returning for its 3rd season tonight, which you completely forgot about. This was the reality of TV heads in the 80s before the development of the VCR recorder. Following that, people no longer had to rush home for prime time and were even able to relive their favorite moments, whether it be a sporting game or that cool new Robert De Niro movie. They simply had to program their device to record whichever thing they wanted to watch, which was perfect. Next, we have the Atari 2600. Kids these days have no idea how lucky they are. In the early 80s, the Atari 2600 was seen as cutting-edge technology in the game space, featuring a max resolution of 160 by 192, 128 colors, and a total of 128 bytes of RAM. If that's not enough to turn you green with envy, it also featured a controller with a grand total of 1 joystick. It might not be so cool these days, but back in the day, they absolutely were. Featuring games like Indy 500 and Street Racer, the youth of the 70s and 80s whiled away countless hours on this classic piece of bedroom equipment which elevated its users into the cool category. Up next, the boombox. Anyone who was anyone possessed one of these beauties back in the day. Synonymous with early hip-hop culture, boomboxes were the definition of cool. Basic models featured an 8-track tape player plus radio access, but if you had your game down, you might have had one of the models that featured a black and white TV screen. Everyone around the neighborhood would carry these, often heavy pieces of kit, on their shoulders, meaning that the party never really stopped. And if you were around in the 80s and had one, you would never have been short of any party offers. The VCR cassette tape. Now let's say you declined the invitation on a Friday night to party and instead chose a night on the sofa. Before the invention of the VCR, you simply had to rely on what was on television at the time. Once the VCR cassette tape came into play, you were free to rent whatever movie tickled your fancy, as long as you had a local movie rental store like Blockbuster in your neighborhood. Up next is the waterbed. Is there anything more synonymous with the 1980s than the waterbed? It's doubtful. One of the best gimmicks of the generation, the waterbed had promised a revolution in relaxation via perfect support, soothing temperature control, and modern stylish comfort. And as you may have guessed, they actually were full of water, believe it or not. Breakfast in bed may have been chaotic because one poorly placed sharp object would mean a very wet morning. Next up is the Trapper Keeper. Were you the sort of kid who could cram all kinds of paper into your backpack? Well, I certainly was. The Trapper Keeper defined a generation of organized school children who had finally had a place to store their notes, assignments, handouts, all without fear of creasing, tearing, or losing them. The Trapper Keeper came in many different sizes and styles, with cool designs and awesome graphics to match your own look. Velcro closures meant no more papers flying around the playground. It was slim, lightweight, and easy to carry, and made the perfect addition to your backpack. Now we're talking about Cabbage Patch Kids. Toys and games in the 1980s seriously upped their game, none more so than Cabbage Patch Kids, of which no two were the same. The main selling point is that they were all unique and gave 80s kids a best friend forever. You could dress them up, take them on adventures, and create forever memories. And they even came with their own name and birth certificate.
Kodak videotape. It captures the sights and sounds of every moment.
Walkman cassette tapes are up next. If you thought you were cool in the 80s with your boombox, the Walkman cassette player was a cut above. These things allowed you to take your own music anywhere you went without the need for a huge portable player. You had complete control, you could listen anywhere, and even make your own mixtapes by recording straight off the radio. Whether you were jogging, commuting, or just chilling in your room, the Walkman allowed the youth of the 80s to press play on their own personal freedom. Up next, jelly shoes. You know how you hear your parents saying that styles are critical? Well, they're talking about things like these. Admittedly, not for everyone, these things mixed style and comfort, a bit like modern Crocs, you could say. Bright and bold, super comfortable, waterproof and durable, these 80s fashions were must-haves which allowed you to complete any look with a little bit of fun. And if you wanted to be more fabulous, you could even add glitter. Now we're talking about acid wash jeans. Just like the jelly shoe, you probably hear older people going on about acid wash jeans, and it doesn't take long for them to come back in style. Boring old denim? Well, forget it. Acid wash jeans brought out the rebellious teenager of the 1980s, the kids who wanted that edgy look. Super comfortable, completely versatile, and adding maximum style points to your wardrobe, these broken-in denim jeans were perfect for basically any vibe you wanted to have. Fashion was bold in the 80s for reasons like this.
I bet you want a sun camera for Christmas. Well, ask for it. You won't break anyone. It's only $39.95.
Next up, we have the Polaroid camera. The 80s would usher in the first time in history you could take a photo and instantly see it. The thing would print out right there and then, but unfortunately, they were a little limited because they could only do 8 photos per pack. It didn't hinder their popularity, though. Why wait weeks to develop your photos when this nifty little gadget could show you snaps from your night out immediately? All you had to do was snap and print, and you weren't only taking pictures with something like this back in the day, you were making instant memories. Shoulder pads are coming next. A lot of you may look at something like this and say that some things should stay in the 80s. However, back in the day, the shoulder pad suit was the ultimate power look. Sharp shoulders were the order of the day in boardrooms around the world, combining 80s chic with fierce style. Corporate bosses, pop divas, and runway icons all knew that if you weren't rocking shoulder pads in the 80s, your game was not on point. A bold silhouette meant style, strength, and success, and a shoulder pad blazer, which was actually relatively versatile, gave your wardrobe that flattering yet stylish vibe that you were after. Now we're talking about big hair accessories. Have a look at any photo of the 80s and the first thing you'll inevitably notice is masses of big hair everywhere. People lived by the bigger is better mantra back then, which applied to whatever hairstyle you were rocking. And of course, it also meant you needed some stylish accessories to keep that wild style in check. Scrunchies, banana clips, and headbands were the order of the day, which were actually imperative with the number of perms knocking about in the 1980s. They really did love the go big or go home mantra back then, but perhaps the 80s could keep the perm to themselves. Next up is the Rolodex. You may not realize it, but people didn't always have access to a smartphone. Before everything was an app for this and an app for that, business people in the world were slaves to the Rolodex. This nifty device allowed you to stay organized and connected without a messy stack of business cards. You could easily flip through names, numbers, and addresses in a matter of moments. It was professional, polished, and built to last, and also looked the part and kept your desk looking sleek and professional. The Rolodex was efficient and elegant and was the catalyst of many 80s business deals. The calculator watch comes next. This one is a serious 80s throwback. The calculator watch defined an era of school children that wanted to make an intelligent-seeming fashion statement. I mean, doing arithmetic on the go? What more could you ask for? Futuristic, functional, and built to last with a long battery life. The calculator watch allowed 80s children to stay ahead of the game with cutting-edge technology on their wrist. It's a shame these things aren't still in fashion these days. Perhaps we should start a group petition to bring them back. We have the CD up next. The compact disc was an absolute game changer. When it came out in 1982, it completely revolutionized how people consume music. Up until then, it was a case of rewinding and fast-forwarding your favorite cassette tapes to find your jam, but it was all consigned to history once the CD turned up. Featuring easy skip, backwards and forwards functions, the compact disc meant a more clean studio-quality sound, as well as being durable and reliable. You only had to make sure that you never left them out of the case like I did, which would make them susceptible to scratches. Get into your closet, it's time for Pac-Man merch. Name a better game than Pac-Man in the 80s. The arcade classic consumed the minds of millions of children around the world, meaning that it was a marketer's dream, and it had merchandise everywhere. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs, lunchboxes, toys, and much, much more were all over the place, and you could never leave the house without seeing something Pac-Man related in the 1980s. If you didn't have at least one Pac-Man poster on your bedroom wall as a child, you were running the serious risk of being outcast by your friends. Now we're talking about leg warmers. Much like the shoulder pad, leg warmers were a staple of 80s chic. Whether you were strutting your stuff in the gym or hitting the dance floor, maybe you were just having a lazy night in, chances are if you were a girl in the 80s, you'd have at least a couple pairs of these versatile beauties in your locker. Bold and colorful, they were the order of the day. I mean, this is the 80s we're talking about. So why not grab yourself a pair and try to make a cultural revolution by bringing the leg warmer back? Next up, we have Reebok pumps. Even today, many people around the world are still rocking the high top, and why not? They're an absolute classic. And the sneaker that started the high top revolution was the Reebok pump. Ordinary? Well, forget about it. Featuring an internal inflation mechanism, the pump was the first sneaker to offer completely unique cushioning for your feet. So whether you were hitting the court to dunk on somebody or simply wanted to show off your style, Reebok pumps were where it was at. Lisa Frank stationery is up next. If there's one thing that you can say about the 80s, the fashion and the style were not boring at all. Lisa Frank stationery was no different. Why settle for a boring notebook and bland pencil when you could opt for a touch of color and creativity in your case? Glittery stickers, gel pens, markers, and vibrant colors were all part of the Lisa Frank range, which all came in any color you could imagine. Lisa Frank really should be credited with making the school day of 80s children exponentially more magical. Now we're talking about koosh balls. Everyone knows that fads are a thing, none more so than the koosh ball. These squeezy and stretchy little balls were a great reliever of stress and allowed children around the world to enjoy themselves in complete safety. Koosh balls were bright and bouncy and came in an array of wild neon colors, so whether you were squeezing, tossing, or simply throwing them at your friends, these addictive things were a fantastic way to while away your lunch break at school. Ring ring, let's talk about the payphone. Just take a moment and think about the facts of the 80s. There was a public telephone at the bottom of most residential streets. All you had to do was put your coin in and dial the number and you could reach anyone you wanted. These days, everyone has a phone in their pocket, but before mobile phones were a thing, the payphone was an absolute lifesaver. Some people relied on their local payphone so much that they memorized the number for their friends where they could reach them at prearranged times. Unfortunately, I don't think this is a piece of technology that will ever make a comeback. Up next, we have neon signs. If you were a business owner in the 80s, chances are you would have a neon sign outside to draw attention to whatever it was you were selling. Eye-catching glows, durable and long-lasting, the neon sign was a fantastic way to brighten up your corner of the world and let the good times glow. Time to get wrapped up in your members-only jacket. The fabled members-only jacket. They were the definition of cool in the 1980s. The sleek fit and the racer collar made the members-only jacket instantly recognizable. With that classic logo on your chest, you'd feel like $1,000,000, so much so that some people still rock them today. Whether you are planning a night out on the town or cooling off with your buddies, chances are your members-only jacket would have been pressed and dry cleaned and ready to go. In the 1980s, Care Bears were much more than just adorable plush toys. They were genuine symbols of love and warmth that touched everyone's heart. I remember how each bear had its own unique personality and message, inviting kids to share kindness and compassion in their everyday lives. Their bright, cheerful colors and cute designs could instantly transform a room into a little sanctuary of friendship and hope. Honestly, it wasn't just about having a toy. It was about embracing a message that even the smallest act of caring could brighten someone's day. Do you ever think back to those days and smile at the memories? It's pretty amazing how these lovable icons still remind us of a simpler time when love and care were at the center of it all. Now let's capture memories on the camcorder. Brace yourself, but people actually used to walk around with a video camera on them, and I don't mean a smartphone, an actual portable camera known as the camcorder. The classic chunky piece of 80s kit were front and center at many a family holiday, trips to the beach, or birthday parties, allowing families to capture life's little moments which up until then had been reduced to memories in their head. High-quality video, instant playback, and easy to carry, the camcorder was the original piece of must-have influencer equipment. Time to get stuck with sticker albums. There was no better way to become the envy of your friends in the 80s than completing a sticker book. Most were centered around sports, but there were also cartoons, Disney, animals, and more. Easy to fill and fun to flick through to show off to your friends, sticker books were the reason for unofficial swap shops popping up on playgrounds all over the world. It allowed you to swap a sticker that you already had with one that you needed from a friend. Next up, it's fruit roll-ups. Have you ever tasted something that reminded you of a certain period in time? Well, these things scream 80s. And if you happen to have some of these in your lunchbox back in the day, you were the envy of the entire class. Fun to eat and full of bold flavors, fruit roll-ups were the perfect on-the-go snack for kids. They came in creatively designed packages, some even including fun stickers. All you had to do was peel, roll out, and enjoy. Make way for glass bottle soda. Before it was cool to recycle and be environmentally friendly, soda actually came in glass bottles, which was way ahead of its time considering that glass is recyclable. Although I can't imagine how expensive it must have been for soda companies. Capturing the crisp and fresh taste that could only come from the seal of glass, these inventions locked in that premium flavor of your favorite soda drink. There's just something about drinking out of a glass bottle that seems so extravagant, so the next time you're sipping out of one at a party, remember that kids in the 80s were the ones that made them cool. Time to get brave with the Evel Knievel bike. Was there a cooler guy around in the 80s than Evel Knievel? Probably not. Inspired by the legend himself, the Evel Knievel bike allowed you to suspend your own reality for a short time and imagine yourself soaring through the sky exactly like the stuntman himself. Iconic details as well as the same rugged design made famous by the biker, the Evel Knievel bike was a must-have toy for any young child growing up in the 80s. So there you have it, the 30 most iconic items of the 80s. As always, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you never miss another great video like this one. Also, like the video and ring that bell for all the notifications you need. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.